and welcome to Women of Influence podcast. Hi, I'm Jaylen with the J Group Real Estate Team.
The Great American Speak Off.
One of my favorites.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another fabulous episode of Women of Influence. Welcome today with me, Eloise Hudson. How are you?
Oh, I'm just so excited to be on here. It's real exciting for me. So thank you so much for inviting me, Jaylen.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I'm honored to have you. I started following you on Instagram, and I know you and I have a similar story, actually. You were in a job that you were experiencing burnout, right? And you were turning 40, didn't really know what you wanted to do with your life. And so you ended up starting your own podcast called the High Achieving Housewife. So I want to hear all about your story. Tell us about your journey.
Sure. Like you said, I had been at a nonprofit. I would say the first 15 years were amazing. It was a nonprofit, but we have a great CEO, great staff, great mission. And so I really was being fulfilled there for probably, like I said, 15 years. And then just some changes started happening, shifting around. And so for the last year, I really found myself kind of doing some soul searching. I even got a life coach to kind of figure out what it was in my life that was really making it hard to kind of get up every day. And I realized it was time for a change of career. It was not fulfilling anymore. And for me, I need a reason to get up in the morning. And so I was just laying around, and like you said, I'm looking at turning 40, but I started that job when I was 22. So I realized I was kind of at a good point in life where I'd already had this meaningful career where I'd learned a lot. But I still had time to have a whole nother career. You know, it's not time for me to retire yet. I have a family. So I knew I would still be looking at working again. So I was literally laying there and kind of going through my friends and thinking, what do they do for work? What does their lifestyle look like? Is that something that would make me happy? And I just kind of started thinking of all my options. And I realized, wow, I know some women who are doing some pretty cool things. Like one at age 35 was becoming a firefighter. She was starting the fire academy in a few months. My best friend was going back to school to get her master's degree. I have two friends who work all weekend so that they can be stay-at-home moms during the week. Just someone was writing a book in her retirement, just all these interesting stories. And I thought, you know, those are what are making me excited for this next phase of life, to think of all these women. I knew two other stay-at-home moms whose kids were entering school, so they were starting their own business. And I thought, this is a really exciting time in my life that I really can start over and do anything. And I thought, what I want to do is share these stories with other women. Connect is my personal word that I really feel like when I'm connecting someone with someone else, that's where I get my real fulfillment in life. And so if I could share these stories and someone heard it and was like, wow, she started becoming a firefighter at 35. I guess I'm not too old to start my new career, you know, whether it's not, and whether or not it's what the topic is. But so it's just been so much fun. I've done about 15 episodes now. And so 15 stories that I've shared. One was a woman who just made the record for oldest woman to compete in the Miss Texas USA pageant. And she did it this summer at the age of 71.
No way.
And she looks amazing. I mean, she looks like a competitor. And so, you know, I just talked to her about, why did you decide to do this? And what did you get out of by saying yes to this opportunity? Because someone came to her and asked her if she would enter. And, you know, of course, at first she thought, why me? But then after a while, she thought, I'm going to watch this now and think, oh, that looks like so much fun. Why didn't I say yes? And so just getting advice like that from other women who have said yes to opportunities has been really, you know, I did it for other women, but it's been really inspiring for me too.
I love that so much. And there are truly so many inspiring women out there. And I absolutely love the fact that you're interviewing all of these inspirational women and sharing their stories so that it can help, motivate and inspire other women. That's very cool. So props to you on that. But yeah, I was reading in your bio and it stated that, when you were initially thinking about all of these women, you initially got kind of like envious or jealous somehow, but then you kind of like shifted to where you realized you were just simply inspired by them. Can you walk us through, what those emotions were like?
Yeah, I looked at these women and the word that came to mind for me was brave, like getting your master's degree at home too, because I don't think I could be able to do online school. I need the going in. I don't feel like
Mhm.
I have the commitment to make myself do it. So the fact that she was, felt confident in herself that she could commit to online school. My two friends who were starting a business and like putting it out there that we're not just stay at home moms, we are going to make this not a side hobby anymore, but an actual business. Or, oh my gosh, going to be a firefighter at the age of 35. I wanted that drive that they had. I was just excited for them at the same time as their friends, but I also felt like, gosh, they're doing these cool things. What cool can I do too that would just, make me want to get up every morning? What is that passion that they have? And that's really when it hit me that communicating is also a really big part of my life. My degree is in print journalism. I love to write, especially. That was what I did with my 16-year career. I did marketing for a nonprofit. So it was a lot of just capturing stories of the children and the volunteers that we were serving.
Mhm.
So I love to communicate and tell stories and kind of take the spotlight off of me, which is why I always say I'm not the high achieving housewife. My guests are, and why you'll see their photos a lot more than you will see mine on social media, because I like to communicate. I like to connect people. I don't necessarily like to be the center of attention. And that's when I realized that I was staying very true to myself. When this idea of starting a podcast came out, that I could fully embrace it. I could be very excited because it was really connecting with my core values. And that's something
Mhm.
I worked on when I was leaving my previous job with my life coach. We did this exercise of kind of to figure out really what brings me joy in life and what doesn't bring me joy in life so that I could attract those and be true to myself. And this podcast was something where I could use my creativity with, doing all the social media and things I did in my previous job, but it also could fulfill my personal passion of sharing stories and communicating and connecting people. But it's also making me step outside the box. Like, this is not something I would normally do, or, having to listen to my voice over and over again. I don't necessarily like the spotlight. I've always been a behind the scenes kind of girl. And so it is also giving me, I guess, kind of that adrenaline of having to step outside of your box, that I was looking at my friends and envying that, that they were getting that fulfillment of conquering something. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
now this has been an outlet for, like I said, I'm hoping that I'm affecting women who are listening. But it's also just been a really, if nothing comes out of this, it's been a really good phase in my life, and I've been super motivated.
That is so cool. And you and I have so many similarities that I'm going to bring up right now. One of them is I also have a degree in journalism, and you talking about your passion and how you love sharing the stories. And I recently discovered for myself that I'm a passionate reporter. Like, that's what I love to do. I love to share stories and, like, different things that I learn. I'm like, oh my gosh, people need to hear this.
Yeah.
So I love that you're also, I'm just going to call you my passionate reporter friend. You're like sharing all of these tidbits of information and all these stories of transformation and inspiration. That is so cool. I can't wait to hear like more of your podcasts and hear more of these inspiring stories from women that you're interviewing. So what's next on the horizon for the High Achieving Housewife podcast? Like, tell us more.
Yeah, so, right now I have a studio that if you're watching, you can see. And so right now, mostly I stick with local San Antonio women because I do like it when we can be in the studio and talk. But of course, I want to reach women all across America. One of my favorite things is when I invite someone to be on the podcast, because they have no idea it's coming. I mean, I know we're both, I think, on Threads also, and a lot of people want to be guests on podcasts, and I totally get that. But my favorite thing to do is be scrolling through Facebook and see someone say something in it. And in that, she mentions that she's also going back to school. And I just message her out of the blue. We don't even know each other. And I say, I have a podcast. I'd love for you to be on it. And these women have no idea that what they're doing is inspiring me and could potentially inspire other women. So I don't know, just, like I said, if this doesn't go anywhere other than me learning some life lessons, I also just really love the joy that I've been able to bring other women just by, sometimes we as women feel very unseen, or we are doing something that is exciting, but we don't have anyone to share that excitement with. And so maybe it doesn't get built up. I have a really good community of girlfriends, and I truly believe that's where a lot of my joy in life comes from, is because we build each other up and we can share ideas with each other. And so, yeah, I just want the High Achieving Housewife to become a place where, women who are bored in their car, the car pickup line, are thinking, what can I do to make good use of this time that I'm sitting in the car? And they think, oh, I'm going to listen to an episode of that podcast. And, by the time they pick up their kids, they're like, oh, I'm motivated. I'm going to go home and start that project that I've been putting off for a long time. So that's really my goal. I mean, of course, everyone wants, people to hear their podcast and for it to grow big, and that would be amazing. But I really would like it to grow organically, very much like find the right women who would be motivated. Like, I have to tell people, if you're offended by the High Achieving Housewife title, you're probably not my target audience, because the women that are listening, hopefully, to my podcast are the ones who do find joy in being like a housewife, married, unmarried, but a mother, married with no children, whatever that term housewife means to you. If you embrace it because you love your family, you love your husband, you love the community aspect, but then you're doing something else that excites you, then you're my people. And so housewife isn't at all meant to be like you sit at home and do nothing. It means, no, you love your life, but you want to do more. You want to achieve more for yourself, and really just for your own self is the reason that you want to achieve it. So those are really my women. And so if those are the ones that are listening, then I'm happy.
That's awesome. You mentioned something earlier about some of the women you're reaching out to. They don't necessarily see themselves as inspirational. And isn't that so true? Like, we as women in general don't give ourselves enough credit. So, and you've experienced that yourself several times. So when when you reach out to people and they're like, oh, they're probably honestly very flattered, right? Because like you said, they don't think that they're anybody special, but like, yes, what they're doing is in fact special, and it needs to be shared with the world. So I love that you're actually calling women out on their specialness.
Yeah, I mean, to be 100% honest, since, I want to reach women with honesty, that's how I felt when you reached out to me. You gave me that gift, and it's a really good gift to be able to spotlight a woman. But yeah, I don't think I reached out to you. I think we generically found each other on Threads or Instagram, and, conversations started there. And that message from you that you were interested in chatting with me more gave me a boost of joy that day. And so if I can do that, one woman at a time, then why not?
Yeah, absolutely. My podcast, kind of like, to change the subject a little bit here, actually was originated by my husband. This was a couple years ago, and he just started reaching out to women on my behalf. Like, when we were networking, he's like, oh, hey, my wife has a podcast called Women of Influence. I'm like, I do? So he got this whole ball rolling for me, and it's just been simply incredible and amazing. All of the special gifts that have come from the podcast. And I think I'm like you, to be quite frank. Like, I quite prefer being the host of the podcast instead of being the guest, because I'm like, I tend to have that let's just call it imposter syndrome. Like, oh, I'm nobody special. Why do you want to interview me? Right. So,
Right. No, I had heard that word so many times and I didn't get it. I thought it was like a self-help, just term that they use so that then they can sell books to say how to conquer imposter syndrome. I didn't really get it until, again, probably that last year that I was at my previous job where I really started to question, was I needed here? Was I making a difference? Was not that it needed to be noticed, but I wanted my work to still be impactful. And I just didn't know that it was anymore. So yeah, that's a really big part of it for me.
yeah, that's really cool. Is there any specific niche as far as, a particular type of woman that you would absolutely love to reach out to, or conversely, somebody who, you definitely would not want to interview, not saying anything about them as a person, of course, but just
Right.
like maybe what they have to offer is not really what you want to put out there to the world.
Right. And I appreciate that question because part of being, I'm sure, any type of business owner or something where you have to brand something or even brand yourself, I have one thing that has been difficult for me in the last few months is really staying close to my vision because I have had a lot of people reach out and say, I have a really interesting story to tell. Can I tell it on your podcast? And while I do want lots of stories told, I also want to be a space where women know what they're going to get when they come to the podcast, what mood they're going to be in. And they know that, oh, listening to this episode will make me feel better about myself. I want it to be a trusted space. And so the basic way that I kind of phrase it is that if you're making a living off of what you're doing, then that's probably not going to be something that I'm going to have you come on and talk about. If it is in addition to your normal living, then it's something that I'm interested in. And not that I'm not interested in your job. I love hearing about people's work and learning about other industries. But like I said, the High Achieving Housewife is more about women who were going along, living their life, and then switched something or added something or really went for it. And so if you've been in a profession for 20 years, I'm sure you have great stories, but I want to hear about what you're doing next. And how did you go from a 20-year career to now switching to what you're doing? So it either would need to be new or outside of your comfort zone. I've done like women who foster children. I've done women who have hosted exchange students because again, that's something that's extra. They were going along living their life and they thought, you know what, we have the capacity to help more children. We're going to open our homes to them. And so that extra step is what interests me when I'm looking for guests, because again, I'm really hoping my kind of tagline is that our stories spark joy and motivation into other women to go after their own goals. And so while there are lots of motivating and inspiring stories, I want one where the woman turns off the podcast and she says, you know what, if she did it, I can do it. I want to give them that same boost that I had when I was thinking about my friends, that I was like, I'm craving that adventurous, I'm doing something new feeling, but I'm scared to go after it. But now that I've heard these stories, I want it even more. And now I have the encouragement, the motivation to go after it. So yeah, there's so many good stories out there, but I do kind of have an idea of what I'm looking for.
That's so great. Now, when you started launching your podcast, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had, and how did you navigate through that?
So I'm a Christian and I very much believe in God's timing. And so I did 16 years. Yes. Okay. So I did 16 years at that nonprofit where I learned so much about, because nonprofits are businesses, even more so in a way, because you have to track things so much because you're getting funding from other people, from the government. So I really learned about business there. And then I thought I was going to do freelance marketing when I first left that job. And I got hired to help with one person, and it just turned out not to be a good fit. So it was only a couple of months stint, and I felt really disappointed in myself that it didn't work out and that I wasn't motivated to do it. And so I think timing was the big thing for me, just waiting on it, because when I started the podcast, I was so fresh off of helping someone get her business off the ground, that I had some ideas of definitely what to do and what not to do. So a very simple one, and I'm not calling her out on this, but I was trying to log on to all of her Instagram or Facebook, YouTube, whatever. They were all different email addresses, all different passwords. And I thought, when I started this podcast and kind of started creating a brand, I thought the very first thing I have to do is get an email address. And that is going to be what I log on for everything. So it's a very practical tip, but really I started thinking about the future before I got started. So, okay, I'm going to need all of those social media accounts. They need an email address. I'm going to start with the email address. So that part. And then also just the big piece of advice I would have is set a date, whatever your project is. I set a launch date of, it was Mother's Day. I think it was May 12th. And I started publicizing. I'm launching this. I committed to people that I know. I posted it on Facebook to where I thought, if I don't do this, I posted about it before I had any episodes recorded, because I have no background in audio visual or podcasts. My background is in print journalism. So I knew I had the storytelling down, but I was posting about it before I bought microphones, before I had anything. And so I committed that I will have all of this ready and done by May 12th. And I ran into so many barriers that, had I not put it out in the universe that this was happening and committed to people, and I didn't want to be embarrassed by all of a sudden people being like, I thought you were launching a podcast. So setting a date was probably the best tool for all those barriers, because I was freaking out. Like, what can I get from Amazon overnight? Because we're recording tomorrow and I still don't have a microphone. Like, I put pressure on myself because I had a deadline. And no one cared. My husband would say to me, you put that deadline on yourself. You don't have to go by it. And I was like, yes, I do. I do have to. I mean, he was just trying to be helpful and take some stress off. But setting the deadline got me over probably all of those barriers.
That's great. And so you did it messy, you did it scared, and you did it anyway. I love that you set a deadline and just made it happen. You go, girl.
Yeah. And it was Mother's Day, and I started promoting. I had 3 episodes for the launch, and then it was going to be every Thursday. Like, I was good at making a business plan. I was really good at setting out how this was going to flow. It was the actual getting people in here and recording a podcast and then editing it. That's another big tip too, as I know with what I do, maybe with what you do, it can be a little isolating. And I got invited to a coffee shop for a women's networking group, and I was sitting next to a woman who just happened to also have her podcast. It was just random. And she glanced at my computer screen and she said, oh, I remember those days. And she said, do you like that program? Because I didn't. And I said, no, I hate it. I just don't know what else to use. And she gave me a suggestion, and I have been using that program since, and I actually enjoy editing. But there was a moment when I was trying to edit those 3 episodes to have them ready, and then knew I had to have another one for Thursday, that I truly thought, there's no physical way that I can get these edited in time, because the editing was so tedious. But she suggested something, and it has been the best tool. And now, like I said, I enjoy editing them. So.
Wow. I honestly can never say about myself that I will ever enjoy doing any editing. I honestly don't even know how this podcast comes together. So props to Chris for all the magic that she makes happen.
Well, I like your honesty. Well, for me, so the way that the program works is it will transcribe everything. So it becomes a written document. So to me, it's kind of like back writing a newspaper article, where I would kind of start getting all the information out. And then I would realize, you know what, this piece of information makes more sense if I cut and paste it up here. So it becomes a project, I guess, when I'm editing it. And I thrive on projects.
Got it. Well, hey, you do you, boo. I love that. So what would you say has been the most valuable lesson that you've learned since starting your podcast, both about yourself and the women that you've interviewed?
Yeah, well, I kind of alluded to it earlier, and I think that's the way I'll phrase it now, is that life is really short, but life is also really long. Like I said, I had already had a 16-year career, and it dawned on me that so many of my friends are the same age I am, and they're starting new things. Or even someone who I had on the episode who's writing a book, she's doing that because she's now in her retirement phase of life, so she has more time. I still have that whole phase of life. I'll probably have a whole nother career and then my retirement phase. I mean,
Mhm.
there's so many different phases of life, and just because 3 years ago, I never thought that I would be in this place. I was perfectly happy in my job. I was happy with life. You could have not told me 3 years ago that I was going to be leaving my job in 2 years. I would have said, no, I'm so happy here. Why would I ever leave?
Mhm.
And so being okay with the fact that one of your phases can end, and it's okay to then take a little bit of time to figure out what you really want to do. I had another job lined up. That one didn't work out. And I was actually very happy, because looking back on it, if I had jumped right into it, was basically the same job I was doing, but at a different organization.
Mhm.
If I had taken that job, I think I still would be burned out, and I would have been burned out within the first year. And
Mhm.
that wouldn't have made me very proud, or fulfilled, waking up every morning feeling like, oh, I've only been here a year and I'm already ready to be finished. And so
Yeah.
between those seasons of life, it's okay if, I was blessed enough that I could take a few months off. I also substitute teach on the side, to bring
Okay.
in a little bit of money on my side. And it also I substitute teach only at my children's school. So that's a whole nother story. But a tool for getting out of the house if you are doing something like this isolated.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
That's oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, so I substitute teach too on the side, so that gets me out also. But so yeah, that's been, and I never would have thought I would substitute taught, but I didn't have children in elementary school and actually want to be there and see what their lives were like. I never thought
Mhm.
I would want to teach. I have no background in that. So yeah, I guess the biggest thing that I have learned and that I'm trying to convey, if you listen to more than one of my episodes, is there are different phases of life, and it's okay when one comes to an end. And secondly, it's okay to not jump into the next one, but to really figure out, what do you want to do with the next part of your life.
Yeah, that's a great lesson to be learned, not feeling the anxiety, not letting it control you, feeling like you have to jump into something, right? It's like, no, take some time to figure it out, because chances are if you do jump into that next thing, you're just going to end up feeling burnt out anyway, just like you did at your previous job, right?
Mhm.
So what advice would you give to women who are feeling burnt out in their careers, but they're unsure about their next steps? They really don't know what they want to do.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, had the luxury of using a life coach at the time.
Hmm.
And it was a 4-month track. I met with her every week, and it really was. And I'm not like at the time, I was not a self-help person. I was grasping at straws when I hired
Mm.
her, because I just did not know why I was so down and what would help me. And so I do know, like I had the luxury. I know not everyone does, but since I have seen her, I am such a mindset person now,
Mm.
because she helped me really figure out like I said, if I hadn't been with her, I probably would have taken that other job and been burned out at this point. But
Hmm.
instead, when that one didn't work out, I was okay, because I realized, you know what, that's not what I was meant to do anyways. It wasn't probably going to be the perfect role. So what I would suggest, if you can't see a life coach, is really, really, if you want to make a difference, start surrounding yourself with positive messages. Like, there are times when I'm just laying there because I'm overwhelmed and I just want to lay there for 20 minutes and just close my eyes. I'll put on one of your podcasts, put on an inspirational podcast that when you're finished, you feel uplifted and
Hmm.
rested. Go on Audible if you can afford it and download a couple of good books. The one that I would start with is How to Do Things You Hate by Peter Hollis. That's a great one if you're a procrastinator. There's also another one, How to Keep House While Drowning. And it's not even about keeping house. She just uses those as examples. You could apply it to wanting to start a new career and other parts of your life. But I've really started trying to, I mean, don't get me wrong. I can tell you what's happening on every Bravo show that's happening, every Real Housewives, every Below Deck. I watch trashy TV all the time. But but when I'm in that mood of like, what should I be doing right now? The TV's not fulfilling me. It's not just distracting me anymore. I'll put on like, and I didn't used to do it before I had a life coach. So I'm helping you skip that step and tell you that listening to uplifting podcasts like this one, or finding something that's in your genre, it really helps to just kind of close your eyes and maybe listen to someone else giving you motivation for 20 minutes. That doesn't hurt at all. And so that's my biggest tip is if you're like a woman who's feeling kind of down or what should I do with my next phase of life? Don't be afraid to open up a free podcast and just play it and see how it makes you feel at the end of it and see if you got anything out of it. Because I really think that taking a minute to kind of tune in and cheer yourself up really goes a long way.
That's great advice. I love that. So outside of the tuning into a podcast or taking a moment to rest or, maybe just turning on some sort of, maybe I like to call them mindless flicks that sometimes just take your mind off things. What other self-care strategies have you implemented or would you recommend to maybe maintain your well-being as people pursue their new paths?
Yeah, like I said, another one of my big life-changing things that I have is my core group of girlfriends. I have 5 friends. I mean, I have more than 5 friends, but there's 5 of us who have kind of done life together. We have children the same age. We've known each other for about 10 years. And so we really make it a priority. We schedule and put on the calendar a brunch once a month. And then we schedule and put on the calendar a Sunday potluck for all of our families once a month. And I know that no one's family or friend scenario looks the same, but that was something that we all have kind of made a conscious choice that being together once a month brings us joy. It fills our cup. I am a complete introvert. I don't like just having conversation with people, but when I meet these ladies for my once a month brunch, it really does fill me up having an hour or two with them. Of course, when I'm done, I want to go home and I want to sit and watch the mindless TV again, and kind of refresh from being out. But find something like that that fills your cup, whether it doesn't have to be a group of 6 friends. It can be a date with your husband. It can be a take your kids out somewhere. It can be once a month, you go get that pedicure. I mean, there's free things too. Go out and take a walk, but schedule something because again, that making that date, if I didn't put it on our calendar that we were having brunch 3 weeks from now on Thursday at 11:30, life would happen. You have to know that that brunch is my priority because 5 other people are expecting me to be there and show that I care about this friendship as much as they do. And I do. And so when something else comes up, I have to say sorry. And brunch does not sound like a priority to anyone else, but I know it's a priority to me. I know what it does for me. And same with those family potlucks. They just bring me so much happiness to see all of our families together. And so there are things where our kids are getting older now and they're like, we want to be with our friends on Sunday. And I'm like, sorry, this is a family activity and you will appreciate it when you get older.
Yeah.
So yeah, just prioritizing those things that do bring you happiness.
Absolutely. And it's a Christian-based principle, but not outside of that. It's very important for us all as human beings to be in community with one another, whether it is with 6 girlfriends or with your husband or, at date night or just hanging out with a friend for coffee. And on that note, like my husband and I have been to a couple of mastermind events and we met some really great couples. So we're not the best at like making new friends and like maintaining those friendships. So I, took the initiative to like book those dinner dates, book those happy hour dates, because it does really fill your cup, like being around other people, especially people that uplift you and elevate you, right? So I think that's just such an important principle.
Yeah, I would say as you're talking, I guess like the big tip is to schedule that time. Don't just say, hey, let's get coffee sometime and walk away. Say, hey, let's get coffee sometime and pull out your phones, or if you're my mom, your paper calendar, whatever you track these on, pull them out right then and say, when can we do this again? When are we going to schedule the next one? That's how we do it with our brunches. While we are there, we pull out our phones and schedule the next brunch, which is a month away. So yeah. And, I know a lot of people are like, where do I meet friends? How do I make friends? I think that's the best way. When you meet someone that you care enough about seeing them again to say, we should do this again, then go ahead and schedule the again, because otherwise you're never going to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. People can talk about it all day long. Yeah, let's get together. But then in reality, they never do. But well, if I ever come to Texas you're in San Antonio, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. We are definitely meeting up for coffee. We'll make it happen.
Yes. I would love that. Yes. Well, as soon as you know your dates, we'll schedule it.
Yeah, definitely. I've never
Yeah.
been there, so it's definitely on my bucket list of someplace to visit for sure.
Yes.
And
It's beautiful
conversely,
here right now.
yeah, I can imagine. Conversely, if you ever come out to Phoenix, you're more than welcome to let's get together and have a cup of coffee or something else to drink, whatever you prefer. That would be amazing. Just don't come right now because it's like super, super hot. It's like miserable still. Crazy.
Yeah, that's how it is here. I was out walking the Riverwalk the other night. It was like 10 o'clock at night and we're still sweating. So
it's crazy. Ugh. You guys probably have a little bit more humidity than we do here, I would imagine as well.
We do. I have family in Arizona, and my favorite thing is to get up and have coffee on their porch because you can sit in the shade and it's still cool. Whereas here you get up and in the summer already it's super muggy in the morning. So yeah, I love it can be cold in the morning in Arizona and then 100 degrees in the afternoon. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is crazy. Quite the shift. But anyway, well, thank you so much, Eloise. It's been such a pleasure having you as a guest on my Women of Influence. Now, how do people contact you if they want to not only listen to your podcast, but if they want to possibly position themselves as a guest for your podcast? How do they reach out to you?
The best way is to follow us. We are on all the socials at the High Achieving Housewife. Just spell it out. That's the best way. And then we're on basically all of the streaming platforms. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Podbean, but we have a link tree, but you can find that again. Go to any of the socials. You'll see our link tree there. And then from there, you can find out how to connect to listen to the show at any time. And it also has a way to contact us by email on that same link tree. So find that on any of the socials.
All right, everyone, you heard it straight from Eloise. Go to the High Achieving Housewife. You can contact her there through any one of the I can't talk right now. Apparently, I need more coffee. Through any of the social contacts that she mentioned. So thank you again. I hope you have an amazing and blessed day and keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. You too.